Hello and welcome to DIY Therapy. As always, we'll start with our disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not designed to diagnose or treat. When beginning any exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. My name is Will. With me as always is Andy, and I did that staring at him as usually I'll read it and look at the words. This time, I stared directly at him. He's making a face that I can't describe. He's disgusted, horrified, frustrated. He's got his hand on his forehead. He's rubbing it. It's great radio drama.
My wife always tells me that whenever I take my glasses off and start rubbing my eyes, that I'm either disgusted or terribly anxious about something. I'll let you take your pick there.
I think a bit of both.
No, not anxious. Disgusted. I felt like we were in like some kind of weird like poetry hour with you. Like whenever you're reading this thing now, instead of like your crazy normal tone and even like pace of your talking,
it slows down.
You're like this slow, like you're just trying to soothe people to sleep here. It's very weird. And when you're staring into my eyes, it's even weirder.
So that's the new normal then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Looking forward to it every week. All right. So what's going on?
Not a whole lot. We talked a little bit off air, but where we live, even though in the United States it's beginning to be fall, even though it feels very much like summer has a death grip on us because it's like 90 degrees out still. They're ramping up on road construction, which is irritatingly stupid and annoying because they won't be able to do anything about it in 2 months.
And it just makes travel to and from work and school with the kids.
It's like literally every possible road is being operated on in some capacity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very annoying. And you got in a traffic accident.
Yes, because of this.
Borderline your fault. Not sure yet.
I mean, isn't it always like my fault regardless? Everything is just always my fault.
Where are we going with this?
I just feel like everything's my fault.
Okay, yes then.
I've been told several times that...
By who?
Names will not be said.
Yes.
But everyone.
I feel like... Interesting. All right, so we're talking... This is kind of a follow-up of our last podcast.
Yes.
Last podcast kind of talked more...
We talked about the effects of poor sitting posture, what it can do to you, what kind of the common pains would be, what the kind of basically the kind of the repercussions of if you continued down that path.
And when you're experiencing pain, a lot of times what is actually occurring,
right?
Like why we're feeling those pains, which is mostly due to overstrain, overstress. Just a small little overview from last week: overpain, overstress of different tissues, whether it's
and we forgot to bring up basically, if you're sitting in there with enough rounded shoulder, you could start suffering from shoulder impingement. Oh yeah. We've had to talk about that.
Yeah, that's also
but that's that's kind of a whole other.
Yeah, but essentially, just tissue gets overused. Soft tissue, muscles, ligaments, tendons.
Those don't get overused. Some of them just get overstretched,
strained.
Yeah,
strained. Either stretching or putting in improper positions to actually, be able to do the activity that you're trying to do.
Right.
So, a lot of times, and we talked about this last week again, but a lot of times when we're positioned in a certain way, it makes the muscle less effective, and therefore it can create more strain through that tissue, and doing that repetitively will cause pain.
Yep.
So today we're talking more along the lines of
strategies to correct the sitting posture to help reduce your pain, improve your... And again, there's no such thing as a perfect posture. There's, your posture and my posture are different. Mm-hmm. If you don't suffer any pain from the posture, like if you were to look at my posture and you're like, yeah, you're in a weird position. I'm like, yeah, but there's no pain. Then
it's not that big a deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything's copacetic.
Yeah. So, I think one of the big things that we're going to talk about today is somewhat of a shameless plug.
Well, it's not really a shameless plug. It's like we've done some research on this, and so...
Well, we've done a lot of research
yes.
on it. And we work this way in our practice also when we're working with patients. It comes down to kind of some bracing and some techniques to help kind of push you along and facilitate healing more quickly. And
sort of, I think of it as like a cue. Like
yes.
there's a physical cue. Like, so when I say cue, I mean like something that's like reminding you. And not only that, just kind of holding you in a position.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is essentially some bracing.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a product that's available. It's a posture corrector for the upper thoracic, upper back, and neck that helps draw the shoulders back and the neck back. And so there are always some controversy, and you'll hear different people talk about different things here about, okay, you shouldn't brace things, you should brace things. Our opinion is that, it shouldn't be a long-term.
No, it's not. No, because I always go back to those people in Africa that, back in the day, you always had like the women had the gold braces around their necks, and that was they were always on there. So, and if you took those off, their necks would not be strong enough to hold them there.
Yeah. So the idea is if you continually brace something over and over and over again,
the muscles
will atrophy. They'll waste away. They'll lose function, etc. And so, bracing is something that we really look at doing for one. What Will mentioned earlier was cueing. Giving you that
the idea of where you should be in space, because a lot of this is just knowing
awareness.
Knowing where you are in space. Because a lot of people, like, I know you have this problem, like, random people have just, like, really poor body awareness.
Terrible body awareness.
By that I mean, like, I'll demonstrate an exercise to a patient. Like, not even an exercise. I want you to raise your arm like this. Mm-hmm. And they do the exact opposite. Yeah. Then I'll put my hands on them and like, no, like this, forcing them into the correct position. And then I'll move them through it a couple of times to kind of maybe get their idea for it. And then I'll say, okay, try it now. They'll still do it wrong.
Mm-hmm. There's actually a patient that comes to mind that I think you and I both worked with probably about a year ago, but he couldn't even do shoulder rolls.
Oh, no, yeah.
And
so a shoulder roll is basically just like you're taking your shoulder and you're doing circles either forwards or backwards.
And I think I looked across the room at you one time and I saw you, and it looked like you were just kind of doing this weird, like, I don't know, like salsa dance with him.
Yeah, because it was almost like a boxer's like, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, It was weird.
Because every time I asked him to do a shoulder roll, all he would do is raise his shoulders up and put them back down. No. I like put his shoulder through a circle. And his poor wife was like, it's like trying to get him to do it too. And
his poor wife is able to do it, and
yes.
he wasn't able to do it. Yeah. But anyways, that's called, basically, we call those, and don't take offense to this, but motor morons, okay? The inability to kind of have a good idea of where your body is in space, poor body awareness. And so one of the things that, like, bracing can do for you is it can give you a baseline of where you need to be. Yes. And so there is value in that if you are one of these individuals that just, hey, I can get my...
Or even if your job is to sit at a desk for 8 hours more a day, it's hard to just sit there and just,
hold yourself up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, bracing should be done to help teach you to what the proper position is or what position we want you to be in. Bracing should be done intermittently also so that you can actually give your body a break, because if you do try to sit in what is deemed a good position for you, for a hour, 2 hour, 4 hour period, you're not going to be able to tolerate that. And obviously then the second reason why we would be using bracing in general, besides cueing, would be just for pain management. Yes. Like, so to get specifically out of those positions. And so the key here is to really do this in conjunction with stretching and strengthening. So stretching the tight tissues and strengthening the weak tissues, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a second. But really, again, you're going to hear, I think we need to reiterate this point, you're going to hear, well, you should never put yourself in a brace. Absolutely not. I have people who, I don't want them in a back brace very often, but you've seen like almost those weightlifting back braces that, are something that
especially people who like stand for long periods of time, I'm noticing, or bend over a bit.
Well, they'll put it on and they'll say, well, I'm in pain, so I put this on, and then they just kind of become addicted to it. Yes. And so,
There's a fine line.
We try to wean them off of that, and they'll still have the question, well, can I do that when I'm doing yard work? Absolutely, because it's a physical activity that you're doing 1 hour out of the day, so you can still do that during those provocative activities if you're agitated in those provocative activities. And so it can still be, the brace can be used, currently for pain management, or if you are getting into, say you always have pain in the car, okay, well then put it on right before you go in the car, especially for long drives. So it can be used for something of that nature. But it shouldn't be the end-all, be-all.
You shouldn't wake up in the morning, put it on, and then you go back to bed, take it off.
And that, I think, this is a product that is an adjunct treatment, meaning it's used in conjunction with other techniques. And so we want to be perfectly clear when we are talking about this product and when we are doing shameless plugs for our DIY posture corrector. It is not something you should be wearing all day long. You need other types of treatments with it.
Plus, your body wouldn't be able to tolerate it.
No,
because like we always said, your body's meant to move. So even if you're holding a perfect, especially say ballet, especially since I said ballet last time, but also because I've started to watch the new John Wick, and there was a ballerina there,
really?
with perfect posture, and stuff like that. You don't need to be consistently perfect. There are times when you can slouch a little bit and kind of relax and.
Yeah, and as we talked about last time, anything that's stagnant for a long period of time, you need to change it. So, one of the sayings that we use a lot of is, your best posture a lot of times is your next posture. So, but also being aware of what really agitates it, you need to avoid for a bit. With that being said, let's talk about some of the things that should be done in conjunction with maybe bracing. So,
stretching first?
Yeah, typically what I like to do with people, there's several different structures that are going to be tight.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, your scalene muscles, which are on the front portion of your cervical spine. Okay, when the head comes forward, those muscles, there's 3 muscles that actually attach kind of to your clavicle and up to your...
Clavicle is your collarbone.
Your collarbone. And so those muscles actually will become tight. So one way that I like to stretch those is actually just get onto your back and just let your head, without a pillow...
Yeah, just lay on the bed or somewhere flat.
Mm-hmm. And just try to get your ears basically even with your shoulders, okay? And bring that head back and make it flat so that... essentially, your nostrils are basically pointing at your toes. Okay, so that your head is tilted up.
You're pulling your chin down too.
Yeah, your chin will be down just a bit too, because that'll stretch out the scalenes. So that's one way to stretch out the scalenes. You can also do a standard chin tuck.
Yep.
Okay, which will also help kind of stretch out the scalenes. It'll also stretch some of the
for all these stretches and exercises, I'll demonstrate them and I'll put them on the Instagram and the Facebook page that I'll put links to in the description too.
And your Twitterverse.
I don't put any of that on Twitterverse. Oh. My Twitter is I'm all over the place on the Twitter.
I'm scared. I'm disappointed.
Nobody wants to see that on Twitter.
There's a hole in my soul now.
It will not be filled by Twitter.
Okay. I'm so glad you do the social media. Can't stand it. Anyways. So basically the chin tuck is also going to help stretch out some of the soft tissue on the back of the cervical spine. It also doubles as a strengthening exercise.
Yes.
So it helps to strengthen some of the upper cervical spine structures. So it kind of that's almost a gold standard to try to keep the head back and versus keeping the head forward.
Yeah. So what happens is if you were to imagine putting your head forward. What happens is it stretches out there are little muscles that if you touch the base of your skull that go from the base of your skull to the top 2 vertebrae. And those get super duper tight. And so what we're trying to do is basically just stretch those out by doing a chin tuck. And then also kind of I don't feel like the neck ever really gets weak per se. It's just that it kind of shuts down a bit. Because I never really feel like anyone's cervical spine is weak.
Well, there's, I might tend to disagree a bit on that. I think there is some cases where, there's a weakness in terms of the ability to maintain.
Yeah, but that's
endurance.
That's more endurance. When people, because how many times when people come in to us for back pain and they're saying my back is weak, it's not necessarily that their extensors are weak. Their back, where they hurt are weak. It's just that they're putting them into positions and they're not meant to hold for periods of time, and thus the endurance.
Capable of
yes,
for
it's more of an endurance as opposed to a strength. If it was a strength thing, to me, you wouldn't be able to do it full stop. Does that make sort of sense?
Yeah. So that would be the first couple of exercises. The other structures that tend to get tight are going to be like your pec minor, pec major. Okay, that's going to draw the shoulders and kind of round. So
those are your chest muscles.
Mm-hmm. And then, from a tightening standpoint, that's usually going to be taken care of from a door frame stretch.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple different ways you can do that.
Yeah, the first one is you can do it with both hands or one arm at a time. It doesn't particularly matter. It just depends on how tight you are. You walk up to a door frame. If you're going to sit, we'll do it with both arms because it's easier to describe. You walk up to a door frame. You put first one you do is you just literally put your arms straight out, and then you kind of you hold yourself through and you let yourself fall through the door frame and get it till you feel a good stretch. Don't want to go into pain. You don't want to go, if your hands start to get a little bit tingly, you've gone a little bit too far into the stretch. Hold that for 15, 20 seconds. Repeat that 3 or 4 times. Good to go. The other variation on that is instead of the arms being straight, you just bend the elbows up and you do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's going to get a little bit more stretch into external rotation at the shoulder too, which is kind of the next step, which is internal rotation tends to be very tight also.
Yeah.
So the pec, that's more, I would say, like
that's what the pec does. Is it internally rotates a bit.
Yeah, but your standard, like I think what people think of a pec stretch would be with the
external rotation. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to really try to stretch that, and so then kind of comes to the strengthening.
Yep.
So strengthening is also fairly simple. Again, you're going to do these things without any pain, but you're going to do low rows, high rows, and Will can kind of describe these and put some links in here. And then you're also going to do probably external rotation to try to strengthen those external rotators so that we can kind of get the shoulders out and rotating out so that they're not stuck into an internally rotated position. So what that'll do is that'll actually strengthen the thoracic spine in between the shoulder blades, your rhomboids, mid traps, low traps, and then external rotators. Yeah,
and why we're doing those for your neck too is because it can act like a suspension bridge. That is like if you were to look at the Golden Gate Bridge, that's one of the pillars that's holding up a portion of the bridge, which the bridge would be in this case your neck.
Yeah, those structures all support the neck so that the neck can be stable.
Yep.
So I think there, like I said, Will can put some links in the description there, but overall, if you work that program with the bracing and you use the bracing intermittently and slowly start to wean yourself off, you can really change from a structural standpoint the structures that are tight and the structures that are weak. And then if you learn the cueing and what is proper positioning, you can really change and monitor your posture at a much higher clip, which is going to reduce your pain.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what the goal is. We're going to continue to introduce some other products that we feel are really
appropriate, like for everything.
Yeah.
That we know that we use
that
we trust, because we're going to test this sort of stuff out and make sure that they're the highest.
Well, we have tested.
Yeah.
So most of these products that we're going to be pushing through the channel and kind of educating to you guys about are things that we use in the clinic every single day. But we use, again, most of these are adjunct treatments.
They're tools. They're not something to be used all of the time.
Yep.
And if you're also, you want to talk about shameless plug, and if you're also having trouble, further trouble, you can sign up for a consultation with us, where you can talk to us live, one-on-one, over the interwebs, and we can help. That's what the kids call it, right? I don't know. And we can help troubleshoot some. If you're having, like, for some reason this stretching doesn't seem like it's helping, or the strengthening, or maybe you need like a different specific exercise or something like that we can kind of work those things out with you.
Yeah, I always joke around with patients that I see even in person that, the majority of what we do now, the best sessions that I have with patients are when we're problem solving.
It's all about, a lot of it is what we do is just education.
Yeah, and it's about getting people to understand how the activities in their life influence their pain and how to limit, modify those types of activities. And then on the flip side of that, what can you do to actually, push things along and facilitate healing on your own too. So most of what we do is not what we do in the clinic. It's how we educate people to manage themselves and manage their specific issues at home. So a lot of that, what we found, it can be done through some of these consultations. So if you're having some issues, if some of the just basic general stuff that we've talked about in the podcast, aren't helping you, sign up for a 30-minute consultation. Will help problem solve your unique issues, take you through your day, help you kind of figure out what it is that may be triggering your issues, and get you back to feeling better.
Yeah, and there's a coupon. If for some reason you're suffering from this specific thing and you do purchase the corrector, there's a coupon in there for free.
Yeah, free consultation. Yep. Anything else going on?
Very little.
No.
How about you?
I finished Carnival Row.
How is it?
Where are you at?
I got stuck at the flashback.
Oh, that's only like episode 3 or 4.
4, I think. Yeah. I get other things started happening, and I just didn't go back to it. I was planning on going back to it, but it did sort of that episode did sort of like
derail you. Not
derail me, but it did answer my it is just an island.
Yeah, I loved it.
Oh, you liked it?
I loved it. I think I was thinking about this because one of the things in that the critics were saying was there's so much going on, and
none of it is inappropriate, though, either.
No. In fact,
it's all things that make sense in universe. And
I think they've done something really smart. Something that I think like Game of Thrones, like a lot of the most popular shows now, I think are going out of this this series of this 1 hour like detective show, and everything gets wrapped up in 1 hour, and then there's an overarching love story that's going on beyond that, and that's really how the formula for all these shows were, on NBC, CBS, etc. for years and years and years.
Dun, dun.
Yeah, everything wraps up in a nice 45-minute time frame, and I think Game of Thrones at one point I was reading an article about them, and they had something like 56 like characters and like 45 different plots that they were through, and they had all these color coded.
I guess it does make sense, yeah.
Well, and so like even when like and that's why you got great drama, was because you had things that got like, think about all of the people that died that were on episode 4 versus when you would anticipate it happening. And I think they've really set up to where they have a storyline that you already kind of know is going to happen in the next season. But they also concluded some. So they've set up all these little things that I think are going, and it makes it feel like there's a lot going on, but I think they've set up to where they're actually really building like a lot of different plot lines that make things interesting. So I thought it was really good. I don't know if they really stuck the ending for the plot lines that they had. Like the last episode was probably my least favorite, to be honest with you.
Really?
But it was you ended up caring for the characters, and like I said, they've set up season 2, and it's not so much even like like Stranger Things, the very first season. It's kind of like, well, that could have been just one.
That could have been, yeah.
That could have been it,
because it almost,
because there's nothing else to do. Well,
that's why I haven't gone back to finish season 3, because like this just seems like a retread of the first one in a lot of ways with different.
Yeah, so this is more Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones-esque, where there's just this continuous plot lines and all these different things going on, and it can be a bit distracting, and sometimes you kind of go back and you go, gosh, what was that? Because that was 3 episodes ago, and I haven't heard anything. But I think they've layered it pretty well.
Is there a map? Do they ever come in a map?
I've never seen a map. For those of you who have not listened to the last podcast, Will wants a map.
I want a map.
Yeah. That's all I got.
I want a map. I want to know the layout of the world. Is this like our world? Because it's basically what most of this is happening in basically London. They don't call it London.
Yes, I don't know if they actually officially call it London.
No, they don't. It's the boroughs or...
Oh, it's a burg. It's a burg.
Yeah, they don't call it London, but it's
London.
Very much London.
It's London, yeah. And it's, 17th century-ish?
Whenever the colonization for that would have been, so right around then.
Someplace around there. But I would recommend it. It was good. And I think there's
the
other
girl.
good
I can't
things.
remember her name. The woman who played the main character, main fairy. I've seen her in other things, but this is by far the best thing I've seen her in.
She was in that Valerian, big
that was
epic. That was just
movie,
a bomb.
The opening, I will argue,
Visually, it was spin.
Yeah, because it's Luc Besson. He's really good at that. I argue that the beginning part of that movie, the first 5 minutes where they're kind of showing with the overlay of the Beatles song, of like the Universe song, where they're showing how, here's the space station, how it grows and grows and grows and stuff like that, and that part's really cool, But then it starts getting to the other parts, and it looks really cool, but the two leads are just, they're cardboard. They're so...
Yeah. Well, and they're
not unlikable, it's just they're not likable either.
That would be a good example, too, of, it's a huge world that trying to fit it into a 2.5 hour period is just really hard when people don't know the source material.
I didn't know that source material at all. I mean, with the sci-fi one, you don't necessarily need to get too in the weeds with a lot of that, because you can just say, oh, here are aliens.
But I think that's a good... this is basically an 8-hour movie that has a potential for a sequel.
Yeah.
The Carnival Row, which I think a lot of people are now starting to, or a lot of companies are starting to try to do more of these. Instead of the silver screen, it's more these, mini-series or limited series that have, great drama over an 8-hour period.
Yeah, I'll have to watch the rest of that this week.
Yeah, check it out. Anyways, that's all I got.
That's all I got, too. Because I haven't finished John.
God, we're so good at segues.
I know.
We are so good at segues.
I haven't finished John Wick, but
I do want to see John Wick.
The first, I love the first two.
I don't remember the second one. Something about a dog. I don't know. Or was that the first one?
That was the first one.
Well,
there is a dog in the second one. But this one is the first. I'm not kidding. The first 20 minutes is just straight up action of him, because it ends where the second one stopped.
Okay, don't give me any plot details.
Well, there's no plot details. It's
just
literally he's on the run and everybody's trying to get him. Everybody in all of and I liked the first one best, because it seemed like, there's this weird underworld thing that people kind of know about, but it still seems small. Mm-hmm. But impressive, it's people know about it, but they don't not. This one, it seems like every third person's involved in this underworld thing, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. It's just too big, and it's just if there's
although it got fantastic Rotten Tomato stuff. I mean,
I didn't but the first 20 minutes is literally action, and the action is still really good, but Keanu Reeves is knows what's coming, so I wasn't even looking for this. But you just start seeing him preemptively move into position to block a thing that's coming when it doesn't look as organic. It looks a little more...
Well, isn't he Neo?
Not in this one.
No. He's Neo for the rest of his life.
Well, they are making
I know.
Either a reboot or whatever. I don't know.
It's not a reboot. I don't know how they're going to do it, but it's not a reboot. Matrix, by the way, that's what we're talking about.
We'll see.
Yeah. All right.
Wrap this up. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not designed to diagnose or treat. I'm going to say the rest of it fast to annoy you. When beginning any exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. Remember, treat yourself.